San Francisco just laid out the perfect game plan on how to beat Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. And you could call this strategy the containment strategy, because it truly hinged on keeping Hurts within the pocket and making him play a traditional style of quarterback. During this game, Hurts completed under 60% of his passes while putting up a rating under 90. So the real question here is how San Francisco's defense was able to make one of the best quarterbacks and best teams across the entire NFL kind of look pedestrian on the field. The first thing that stood out initially was how Steve Wilks was able to get his defensive unit ready for this game. With San Francisco, this actually hasn't always been the case. Specifically under the era of Kyle Shanahan, his defensive coordinators at times would struggle containing mobile quarterbacks. However, rather than adopting San Francisco's strategy of pinning their ears back and getting to the quarterback against the Philadelphia Eagles, something they would surely exploit, Steve Wilks and Chris Kasarik, the Niners defensive line coach, came together to speak about the opportunity to contain Jalen Hurts and make him play a more traditional style of quarterback. While Hurts can definitely be one of the deadliest quarterbacks across the entire NFL, they realized quickly if you keep Hurts within the pocket, it negates his scrambling ability and makes him much more of a one-dimensional quarterback and not on the same level as guys like Brock Purdy, who has to rely much more on his processing day to day. So without further ado, let's jump into this Philadelphia Eagles game. And the first thing I want to focus on here are the defensive ends, Nick Bosa and Clelin Ferrell. They do a great job of setting the edge of this pocket and not allowing Jalen Hurts to come out of it. Jalen Hurts takes much longer than a guy like Brock Purdy to make his decision. And then the Niners defensive line finally gets to the pressure on the quarterback, resulting in Jalen Hurts trying to dump it off. But the Niners still have great coverage in the secondary and break up this pass. You can't be holding on this ball as long as Hurts did and think you're going to get completion against a team like San Francisco or the Cowboys. Even though the Niners had to change their entire style of defensive line play, they still put pressure on the quarterback. As you can see on this play, Chase Young pressures Jalen Hurts out of the pocket. But what I love here is how Nick Bosa is able to still keep Hurts contained. This is thanks to his athleticism, but also thanks to the secondary coverage. Charvarius Ward goes hand in hand with this defensive line's containment. What's maybe more impressive though is how San Francisco's starting defensive line didn't have any sacks. And while that may sound like a bad thing on the surface, the whole entire defensive line was eating throughout the day. On this play, Eric Armstead is able to get outside contain on Hurts and break up this pass. So while some of these plays don't show on the stat sheet, they play a crucial role in the game's outcome. Perhaps the best play to illustrate this is where San Francisco did get a stat on the defensive line, this Javon Kinlaw sack. But you can't really put it all on Kinlaw because the secondary is covering all day, but Bosa is keeping Hurts within the pocket, and finally, he's not able to escape for enough time before he gets wrapped up from Kinlaw. But now, when we look at it from another angle, we can see how Hurts truly has nowhere to go with the ball, and thanks to players like Young and Bosa keeping Hurts within the pocket, Kinlaw is able to clean up this sack. However, while we have been crediting the defensive line, we also need to talk about Jalen Hurts as a quarterback within the pocket. He doesn't make decisions quick enough. On this play, the ball should have already been out, but rather he holds this ball for around 7 seconds. And while there's only 2 routes within the pattern, we've seen Brock Purdy and other quarterbacks release this ball much quicker and not take this sack. But Hurts, throughout this game, showed time and time again he struggled with making decisions within the pocket, something I think subsequent teams like the Cowboys could look at on tape and really utilize to torture this Eagles team, especially if they're not able to figure it out. So Hurts, when looking at this film, will have to look deeply and say, yeah, I need to get better at making my decisions and making them quickly. With that being said, another aspect of San Francisco's defensive line play I loved is how they stayed active even with this containment strategy. Here you can see how Javon Hargrave gets his mitt on this ball and breaks up the pass. Once again, coming out of the half, San Francisco's defensive line was a crucial reason why this play didn't succeed. But once again, they didn't get a stat. But Hargrave is able to contain Jalen Hurts, force him to the sideline, and then the linebacker, Oren Burks, comes up and really stops Hurts from making any mobile play. this is perfectly played by San Francisco against Hurts, who often would make teams look silly in these situations. While we really focused on the Eagles' passing attack, San Francisco's defensive line also was all over their rushing game, with penetration seemingly every time they went to run the ball. San Francisco's defensive line was frankly on another level. When you look at this play, for example, San Francisco is only bringing 4, something they did throughout the day, but Nick Bosa is just too gifted not to get to Hurts almost instantly. This spin move has to be one of the nastiest I've seen in a long time. And while, once again, this is an incompletion, these are the type of plays that accumulate throughout the game and leads to a score 42-19. So when I look at this game, I can't help but think San Francisco laid out the blueprint how to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. When you look at almost every play, San Francisco really forced Jalen Hurts, or tried to remain inside the pocket. And this really forced him to play quarterback like a guy like Brock Purdy or Tom Brady has to, which negates a huge aspect of his game. And as we could tell throughout this game, this resulted in a dominating performance from San Francisco. But ultimately, these are just my thoughts on San Francisco's win over the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. It would also mean a ton to me if you liked and subscribed. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.